We want to welcome our next guest speaker for the Garden Club coming up here on February 28th. It's Susie Vanderlip, and she is the world-renowned expert on monarch butterflies. I'll just give you that title. I don't know if that's official or not. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, monarch butterflies, I mean, we have Monarch Bay here in Southern California, and we have a history of having monarchs kind of migrate up here from South America, right, or Central America, and coming here. When did you start getting interested in monarch butterflies and kind of like looking into this world?
Well, it started about 14 years ago, and by accident, I'm a huge gardener, so I'm excited to speak to the garden club on any topic. And I was in my garden, as you can see behind me.
Sure.
Um, and I was out there because I'd had a ruptured, excuse me, ruptured appendix, and I was healing. And I saw these caterpillars that captivated me. I didn't know what they were. Ran into the site and got on the internet and learned everything I could, finding out they were monarch butterfly caterpillars.
Okay.
Got involved as a citizen scientist, and over time got very connected through the monarch butterfly world. And now I am the monarch butterfly citizen scientist, the monarch butterfly conservation specialist here in Southern California for an organization called Monarch Watch. And they have studied monarchs for the last 45 years.
Oh, wow.
And then we photograph them. I have a huge semi-professional photographer and author, and I photographed them and videotaped them, and I just created all kinds of things out of them because they are so beautiful.
Now, when I was a kid, I remember reading in National Geographic, literally that's when when it was still a magazine, I think, that came to your house and things like that, that there was this forest in South America somewhere where all of them come and there were millions of them. And there was actually a secret forest because they didn't want people coming in there pilfering and walking on them and destroying their habitat. But the numbers have been going down, right? So do we know what's happening with the decrease in the population?
Well, I will, in my talk, be going over all of the life cycle, including the migration of monarchs. And
Mhm.
just to clarify, we have Western monarchs and they're Eastern monarchs. They're separated
Okay.
Rocky Mountains. They're the
Uh-huh.
same DNA, same creature. But our monarchs, our Western monarchs, Washington State down and out to Utah, they don't go down south. They don't
Oh,
migrate
I thought for sure.
there.
Okay.
No. Ours migrate though, and they migrate to Central Coast California, Santa Barbara to Santa Cruz. And the eastern monarchs migrate 3,000 miles down to Michoacan, Mexico, which I have been to, and there are
Okay.
millions, and it is remarkable. But our migrating monarchs are just as beautiful at Pismo State Beach, Monarch Grove. You can see them there. They're there November through February, and then they come back to us. And
Mhm.
we are so blessed in Southern California. We have the largest or longest monarch season of anywhere in probably the whole United States. So we get them like March through October, and then they migrate and sleep. And
Mhm.
they rest, and they don't eat, and they don't mate, and they just sleep in huge bundles of about 1,000 to 2,000 to 5,000 roosting together to stay warm through the winter.
Now, I was driving through the desert one time in Arizona, and the monarchs were coming through in their migration, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was an amazing, amazing sight to see like this just not black in the sky, but just everywhere you look, there were hundreds and hundreds of monarchs filling up a space in the sky. It's an amazing
That
thing
is
to see.
remarkable. But what you mentioned, we'll also be talking at this talk. I'll talk about how to garden for them, how we can all help expand the population of our Western monarchs. The Western and Eastern monarchs have both been, they're in about 98% decline since 20
Wow.
years ago. Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty significant. Now they're not going to go extinct in the very near future, but the population's really dwindled, and that is one of the things we're doing in Southern California is to try to plant lots of habitat, lots of urban gardens.
Right. So are there monarch gardens that you can be specifically like plant, and what are some of the things that would promote them to come to your yard and seed and or plant or do their eggs, not seed, but
Exactly what we want. They have what's called a host plant, and every monarch, every butterfly lays their eggs only on one kind of plant or a very handful of
Okay.
plants. For monarchs, it's called milkweed,
Right.
and it's easy to purchase. And we're going to discuss also, there's something called tropical milkweed, and there's something called native milkweed.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each and what to put in your garden. And then they drink nectar from a whole variety of plants. So
Mhm.
what are the nectar plants that our monarch butterflies specifically, like to nectar on? And that helps them immensely because
Okay.
without nectar, they can't survive as adults.
So they got their plant, they're laying egg plants, and then they also have their feeder plants, their nectar plants. So it's a lot to think about. Now, all these things I assume are native to California already because they wouldn't have migrated here, started those migrations long before the population centers began, right?
We have native milkweed and we have lots of native nectar plants.
Mhm.
However, one of the reasons they're on severe decline is because we plowed down those native
Mm,
plants in order to do agriculture, in order to create homes and cities. So we've taken away their grocery stores and their nurseries. We have to put those plants back. That's essential. And then there's some other issues like overuse of pesticide. Pesticides kill insects. Guess what? Monarchs are insects.
right.
And then we have global warming issues. So all that will be shared at this talk. It's really intriguing. One of the things I think that's important to know, butterflies are the most complex insect on the planet. They are the only insects that really have to metamorphosize to get their wings. The other thing that I get excited about sharing when I'm at these garden talks, which I've given for the last 10 years to garden clubs, uh, I have a lot of video I've taken that's so engaging. It shows the monarch caterpillar creating its chrysalis, which is just shocking, and video of the monarch butterfly emerging or being born out of the chrysalis, which is also just as stunning.
Yeah, I think that transformation is kind of a very fascinating things for folks to think about. This looks like this worm-like caterpillar type creature, and then it turns into this amazing butterfly. And I think children are probably even more mesmerized by that process than the adults, but maybe not 100%, which leads me to my next question for you. You've written a children's book. Tell us a little bit about your book for children.
Thank you. It came out of my absolute fascination with everything monarch. And I'm going to let you know that I find adults are just as mesmerized by the process when they see it as kids, because it's so much more than we think it is. The whole process of going into the chrysalis, coming out of the chrysalis, it's like, whoa. Um, but the children's book came out of my love for photography and of monarchs, the combination, and video. I couldn't help myself. I just took pictures every single morning and afternoon for 2 years. And then I called it into a story that just flowed out of me about this caterpillar called Chester looking for his destiny to become a monarch butterfly. And it really tells the life cycle. It's all science-based, but it's gorgeous. The
Mhm.
photos are gorgeous. So I will have that at the talk. If anybody has a grandchild or a child in your life that you want to sit down and just jointly read a book and enjoy each other, I'll have it there for sale.
Are there misconceptions or things that people don't understand about the monarch butterfly and these migration patterns in and of themselves that you kind of like help people clarify?
Well, I think that's a great question, because even I think what has been so publicized has been the Eastern monarch remarkable migration down to Michoacan, Mexico. It's 3,000 miles. It is the longest migration of any insect. So it's one of the marvels. But it doesn't mean that our Western monarchs aren't equally fascinating and beautiful. I think that migration will clear up, but also the life cycle. Oh, I must clarify. When I was growing up, we were taught everything creates a cocoon. Well, guess what? Moths spin a cocoon and butterflies make a chrysalis. So that's
Hey,
one of
I didn't know the
the
difference between that
misconceptions.
when I was a kid either. I didn't understand that difference.
Yeah. And that will go into as well. I think one of the joys, monarch butterflies for many cultures, the American Indian culture, certainly the Mexican culture down on Michoacan, have a huge celebration when the monarchs return there in September, October, um, because there are cultures that believe that the spirits of our ancestors are in those monarchs. And I cannot tell you how many times people have come up to me after talking and told me that at the funeral of a loved one, they saw a monarch butterfly. And
Oh,
for them, it will always represent the spirit of their loved one.
that's amazing. What a wonderful, wonderful story. How important is it for us to conserve, make sure we're planting these gardens, and what happens if the monarchs go away? Is there a collapse in the kind of the ecosystem in terms of those concerns that we might have?
Well, that's a real serious subject, and it is really significant because monarchs are pollinators, just
All
as
right.
bees are pollinators, but they pollinate lots of flowers.
Mhm.
Uh, the loss of any insect is of great concern to the entire scientific community, because people don't realize insects are doing so many jobs constantly to get rid of decay, to pollinate, to fertilize, to, they are just an intrinsic part of our ecological system and our food production. So even though monarchs aren't going to be the bees that, do lots of crop pollination, they are a critical part of pollination. The other thing is that they're so beautiful. They are considered the iconic butterfly because, first of all, they're larger than most,
Right.
and
They're huge.
behavior special. They float. Other butterflies flit so fast you can't even hardly see them. Monarch butterflies float, and that's why I was able to photograph them so well, because they'll sit on a nectar plant and they'll pose for you, and you can take beautiful photographs of them. And so everybody knows who they are. It really, I have found fascinating. Anybody who has ever raised a monarch caterpillar all the way through chrysalis to it becoming a monarch butterfly, they become totally passionate. I mean, everybody I know, man, woman, child. I think it's because it represents becoming something, change,
Yeah.
trusting the process of life.
Right. And once you
So,
become a surrogate parent, how could you not love your kids?
yeah.
Well, for folks who want to know everything there is to know about planting a monarch-friendly garden, through the pollination, through the chrysalis process, Susie Vanderlip's going to be at the garden club at February 28th, Wednesday. It's going to be a great meeting. Make sure you get out there and enjoy it. Susie, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're watching This Day. We'll be right back.